Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the FPV News with JB. That's me.
And it's Blunty.
Oh, we don't really rehearse these things. I don't know. I feel like I'm putting you on the spot. I never know what I'm going to do when I start the intro.
Yeah.
It's so weird, you know.
Maybe I should if you don't know what you're going to do, I don't know what I'm going to do. Right.
We just have to, it's like an improv show.
Yeah.
You know, yes, and I'm ItsBlunty. Except I'm not. I should watch some real news reporters. See how they do it.
I don't think we want to emulate that. I don't want to emulate
It's a bad idea. I should watch some real podcasters. You know, Good Mythical Morning, right? Do they those are two guys with a very popular
reference. Yeah.
No, you don't like Good Mythical Morning? I don't really watch them. I just know they exist.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting reference. I haven't seen them in a while.
They're still very popular, I assume. I don't really watch them.
I'm sure.
Couldn't say.
Yeah.
Welcome you guys as well to the FPV News, where me and Blunty are going to go over the major developments in the world of FPV. If it's not here, it probably just means we didn't know about it. It doesn't mean anything about how newsworthy it actually is. Good to see Fabio Pansera, my editor, the guy who is responsible for the editing on today's amazing Indiana Jones joke on my GoPro review. Good to see you, Fabio, and everybody in the chat. What do we got coming up this week, Blunty? What are some of the top stories this week?
Well, I'm sure the big one I think everybody has, I hope, heard about at this point, is that Orqa has acquired ImmersionRC.
So everybody's getting acquired, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about
everybody's just getting Fat Shark, Red Cat, Orqa now acquired ImmersionRC. So we'll talk about what our thoughts about that. And related to that, there was some clapping back. Was that what they do these days? They clap back.
That's true.
Orqa and Yvonne and Tony Cake from Orqa had some comments about HDZero being open source, and Carl responded to those a little bit. So we are going to cover this in a neutral and newsy way, not in a TMZ editorial way, but we are going to talk about that.
Yeah. I
didn't change the title. I have to get the clickbait into the title, Blunty. That's the one thing I forgot to do. I'm going to take the the Pixy. That's going to really... I hope somebody from Pixy sees that and gets really mad at us. Oh, you know what else I didn't do? Gosh, dang it, Blunty. Boy, I am so off my game. I didn't put the show notes in the table of contents. Sorry, hold on. I'm doing that right now. Kill time, Blunty. Kill time. Mystery show. Talk about another story that's coming up. Well,
Well, today we got to do plugs. We could talk about plugs. So we could work on that.
Yeah, you do that.
So we want to let everybody know, of course, that each of us has a website and we got stuff going on. So if you want to check that out, we'd always appreciate that. So first up, we've got fpvknowitall.com, and that's Mr. Bardwell's website. He's got a bunch of great stuff over there. He's got a shopping list where you can go check out his recommendations and other folks' recommendations that help him out. Know what you need to buy for your quads. We've also got ItsBlunty.com, which is my website, and I've got one-on-one troubleshooting help for people and some links to some good stuff you might need.
With a domain like ItsBlunty, I think some people are probably going to stumble across it and be really surprised there's no cannabis-related content on there. They'll be like, why am I reading about drones?
Yeah. And then last but not least, we also want to let you know about the JB Clips channel. So we've got the JB Clips channel, which I am helping to run now.
Well, more than helping. I mean, this is newsworthy in itself. Yeah. Is that I've literally just turned the channel over to you for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
The JB Livestream Clips channel. So
yeah.
That's good because it means that there will be more actual live stream clips. What it had been was just the news, because it was really easy for Fabio to cut the news up and put it up there as clips. And then I would sometimes remember to go publish them. And now, Fabio, you are actually watching the live streams, creating clips, and Fabio's cutting them up, and it actually is going to be a real live stream clips channel. So get over there and subscribe.
Yeah,
if we hit 3,000.
Yeah, we got the link in the show notes. We're working on getting a custom URL. YouTube's been a little weird about that. Yeah. But we've got the link for you in the chat. If you want to go over there and subscribe, we would appreciate it. So.
Yeah, you would appreciate it because you're going to get all that live stream content. Who sits through 2 hours of my live stream? Some people do, but not everybody.
Did you know JB is a thought slayer?
I am a thought slayer. I slay them thoughts.
Yeah, there's a clip you can check out.
Coming up next week, we'll hear my feelings towards Jason Momoa. See what you're missing on live streams? All right. It's Cool Cat says the JB livestream clips has been on fire for the last couple days. Yeah, because Blunty is now in charge of it, and that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. Thanks for the subs. Appreciate it, guys. All right.
Eventually. All right. So those are our plugs. Let's move on to our very first actual news item. Orqa acquires ImmersionRC.
Yeah.
The maker of the goggles has acquired the maker of the Ghost module. I don't know. Rapid fire module.
So in one world, I think this is super crazy and awesome. And then on the other hand, it's we knew this was going to happen, right? So
I mean, they've been partnered. They've been sort of they've been living together for a little while. They finally tied the knot, I guess is one way to put it.
That's kind of how I think about it too. But it is very cool to see. I'm glad to see these two teaming up because I do think it will overall just make an improvement for what both of them are producing. However, I'll be interested to see what comes out of them and how they continue to move forward. We've seen a lot of good stuff from them. I think the Orqa goggles are a good product. I don't think they're a bad product. A lot of people seem to be choosing them alongside or over the Skyo 2 or Skyo 4X or the HDZero 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've even got that 533 version, which is a little smaller, a little cheaper. So there's now a cheaper option for a premium goggle that people might not want that bigger FOV. However, we've also seen things like the FPV control, which is a controller, which is a proprietary controller basically, that doesn't use up inner HDX, can't flash them, and can only use one protocol, which is Ghost.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of questions about where they'll move forward and how they'll move forward and what will come of that. So.
Yeah, if you look at ImmersionRC, they have they've had some products they do on their own, like the ImmersionRC Lap RF, the ImmersionRC RF Power Meter, and the PowerPlay DVR are some that come to mind. But it has always felt to me in some ways like the sort of soul of the company goes back to their partnership with Fat Shark, where they developed the module. I mean, I don't know that. I guess I'm making some suppositions here. I know that Fat Shark and ImmersionRC were operating out of the same building in Shenzhen, for example, and I had the impression that Tony Cake did a lot of the engineering for some of the Fat Shark stuff. We know he has the skills to make a module. So when they sort of came apart and ImmersionRC started partnering with Orqa, it seemed natural to me that they would come together, because that, at the end of the day, a rapid fire module is best when it's paired with a goggle, and Tony Cake has a lot of engineering chops, but he needs a company to help him, sort of market and produce those products. So I think there's a lot of potential here. If they can stay out of their own butt enough to stay in, because I think it's easy for you to sort of get up in each other's butt so much that you don't really know what's going on in the world, and you come up with products maybe that people don't really want or that aren't the best thing for your customer.
Well, it's interesting. I think, to me, I think this contrasts very well with the next thing we're going to talk about, because this is essentially, hey, we're two companies, and we're going to work together to create an ecosystem that you're going to like and you're going to be happy with and you're going to enjoy, right? Mm-hmm. And then instead, we've kind of got, and that's sort of like, it feels like they're in an echo chamber. I've said that before, and I think that's true. I think they kind of live in an echo chamber where they think all these ideas are great, and they all tell each other they're great, and then
sometimes they are. Sometimes they are great.
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't, though, I think, and they don't have that critical eye. It doesn't seem like sometimes internally they have the same critical eye. So Ivan goes on and talks shit on Facebook, which he's done a few times, about stuff, and then you have HDZero, which is our next story, and we've got an interview. Go ahead.
So we're going to go to this next story, and this next story relates to HDZero announcing that they were going open source. And one of the things that happened was that I think somebody on a live stream said Tony Cake said some stuff. I didn't see the comments. You told me that Ivan from Orqa said some stuff. I didn't see those comments. And Ivan actually deleted some of the comments, or all of the comments. So out of respect for the fact that he said some stuff that he obviously decided to take back, we're not going to dredge up those comments and then sort of grill him about them. We're going to say, okay, you backed away. We'll let you do that. But Carl, there was some criticism and questioning about HDZero going open source, and is it really open source? And Carl talked about that stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about, is Carl's statements, not necessarily the things he was replying to. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially you have... you kind of have two sides of this coin here, which, like I said, you have Orqa doing their own thing and they know what's best. And then you have HDZero. So we've got an interview from MadsTech. This is basically a set of clips from his interview. He's going to be releasing a full interview later this week. This is a great interview so far. I'm sure the full one will be excellent as well. And he talks to Carl about some of the things people have had concerns with, different, the pricing issues and margins and why the margins are like they are. Great information. But yeah, one of the things they talk about here is that essentially, when they're open sourcing, all they can open source is the software and the hardware designs to use the ASIC somewhere, because there's so much money invested in the ASIC. It doesn't make sense to open source an ASIC design because most people aren't going to build it anyway, and there's so much IP in it. And, he basically addresses directly what we've talked about before, which is he says Semtech also does the same thing. You
Right.
know,
So I think you've leapfrogged slightly. So I'm going to back up a second. The general gist of the criticism was that if you open source the project, it's not really open source because it includes this chip, this ASIC, which is the heart of the HDZero tech, and that's not open sourced. And so if the whole thing isn't open sourced, then it's not really open source, was the gist of the criticism. Which, as you point out, and I pointed out separately on my live stream, and Carl points out, again, separately, if you look at Express LRS, the Semtech chip that they use is a closed source whatever thing that Semtech sells, and anybody can make designs based on it, but they're not, that's where their money is. They can't give that away. And it's still open source in every meaningful way.
Yep. Yeah, it will be just as capable, hopefully, based on what they can do with the ASIC, you know. Yeah, I don't know. So I think that's a poor viewpoint to have, is to think that it's not open source because the ASIC isn't open source. That's
clearly, an example of what we were talking about in the previous bit, if I could, which is that you have this, everyone is a little bit up their own butt in a way. You know what I mean when I say you're up your own butt? I don't literally mean. I mean, like you're in your own head. You have your own perspective, and you're not thinking about things the way other people think about them because you have your own biases. And so you think you are the CEO of Orqa, and you see this thing, and you go, "Well, that's a bunch of bullshit," and you criticize it. And you need someone who is outside of you to say, "Well, actually, wait a second, that's BS. That claim is BS." The problem is if you don't have that person. If you got a whole bunch of people who are up their own butt, then they all just go, "Yeah, you're right. That's a bunch of bullshit." And then you think you're, that's the problem. That's the risk, I think.
Yeah.
So, what about the question about HDZero is not just selling the ASIC? If HDZero was only selling the ASIC and providing reference designs for other people to manufacture, that would be fine. And that, in fact, is what Express LRS does. The Express LRS project doesn't make any hardware. Well, I mean, they don't sell any hardware. You could make your own hardware, of course. Whereas HDZero is making video transmitters, making video receivers, and essentially competing with Foxeer, Runcam, Cadix, anybody who wants to make TBS, anybody who wants to make an HDZero. How does that different? What do you think?
Well, basically... let's put it like this. So basically, Carl says in his interview that, essentially he made the things because he had to make the things. In 2019, Carl went to all the FPV manufacturers in China and said, "Hey, do you want to use these chips? We have a system that you can see called HDZero. That was what it was called in 2019.
Right.
And they shopped it around. It was a working system. Okay.
Right. Because the company's Divimath.
Yes, that's correct. So he shopped the HDZero around to everybody, and then nobody wanted it. Everybody said, "No, this doesn't make any sense. DJI just released a system. Nobody will do this. Fuck off with your ASIC. Nobody wants it, right? We don't care about your chipset." Mm-hmm. Fat Shark said, "Okay, cool. Let's try it out." And they made Bifrost, right? Bifrost was the first iteration. Bifrost was the first iteration, and that still didn't really bite. Mm-hmm. And then he didn't take off. Fat Shark didn't keep ordering. They didn't keep producing because nobody really bought into it and nobody really wanted it. Fat Shark didn't push the marketing, didn't push the hardware, didn't keep investing into it, right? So then Carl said, "Well, shit, I still want to do this."
Right, he didn't just give up.
But he also said, "I have no clue what I'm doing.
Right.
I just have an ASIC and I don't know how to build for FPV." So then he said, "Okay, well, let's just start making hardware and then start asking people what they want."
Well, and it's an easy thing to see how it happened too. Carl wanted to sell the ASIC, and the HDZero system was in some sense supposed to just be a reference design, right? And he shopped it around and said, "Look, here's proof of concept. It can work. Do you want to build this? And I'll sell you the chips." And nobody took it. And rather than letting it die, he said, it's like a band who tries to get signed to a label, and no label will sign them. And finally they say, "Fine, we're going to record our own album." And they self-publish their own album, and they try to get on the radio, and they try to get in front, the radio. They try and get plays on Spotify and TikTok. What's wrong with me? But they try. I'm old. And eventually maybe they make it. And maybe then a label signs them, or maybe not. You know, the analogy falls apart. But the whole point is that Carl doesn't want to be making this hardware. He wants the Fat Sharks, the Runcams, the Cadixes, the Foxeers, the TBS, the ImmersionRCs of the world to be making this hardware. And they just weren't biting. So now he has to prove it himself. So
And what he points out is that's how we got the Race V2. That's how we got the V2, the camera, the new cameras. That's how we got the solutions that we have now and the improvements that we have to the system. That's why we have backpack integration. Like all this stuff came from users in the community asking Carl for what they want.
Frankly,
Carl helping to get that stuff made and produced and then try to get it out. I mean, that was the goal of Carl, is just to build proof of concept. Go like, hey, listen, this shit works. Please use these chips. Yeah. And that's the goal. So.
I mean, there's a precedent for this. If you look at the world of graphics cards, there's a big controversy in some circles over the fact that like NVIDIA will sell Founders Edition cards, which are graphics cards made by NVIDIA, and NVIDIA will sell their chips, their silicon, to other integrators who will sell their own graphics cards, which will then compete against the NVIDIA Founders Edition cards, which are made by the hardware manufacturer itself. So it's not unprecedented to ask, is this a toxic relationship? What's the motivation here? But it's also not unprecedented for that situation to exist. And especially if I believe Carl when he says he doesn't want to be in the business of making hardware. And I believe him when he says it's not his specialty. Like, I don't mean that as like a slam. I think it's not the thing he's best at. And he doesn't like having to do it. I mean, he's willing to step up to the plate. He's doing an admirable job. But ultimately, if TBS said, hey, HDZero, we're just going to make video transmitters for you. Give us the chips and go sleep well at night. I think he'd be happy with an arrangement like that. So
yeah, that's what they want to do. So
okay,
yeah,
all right.
I don't know. It seems like he's got a lot of good thoughts about that stuff, and it makes sense. I just think the big contrast there is Orqa and ImmersionRC knows what you want. HDZero is happy to do whatever you think is best and help to develop a good product. Yeah, I think that's like, to me, the big contrast between the two, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. And the HDZero goggle, if it works out properly, depending on who they're partnering with, which, there are rumors about that, but depending on who they're partnering with, will be it'll be good. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be, if they make a good goggle. That's a big benefit, because they'll have a premium goggle, hopefully around a premium goggle price that also does analog, that will have HDZero inside of it. So that could be a big selling point.
The other thing that brings up is the obvious competitive situation between Orqa and HDZero. If the HDZero goggle is amazing, people are potentially going to buy it, and those are people who might have bought and will not buy an Orqa goggle. Even people who use HDZero are buying Orqa goggles to use it with. So whenever you've got two CEOs who are directly competing, it's hard to take anything they say about the other guy seriously, because it's just perceived as scared of competition. And, even when they're right, it's like on some level, you kind of maybe want to take the high road, which, he deleted his comments, so maybe he agrees. All right. Next up. That's a good one.
Next up, there's a new drone for people who don't fly drones.
The Pixy.
The Pixy. The Pixy is a $250 drone that takes pictures for you. It's basically like the DJI Lite for almost the price of the DJI. And I can tell you right now, I don't really get this at all. I bet they'll sell some of these because people aren't.
The price of the DJI, what do you mean? It's $250.
Right. And it literally is a couple stick batteries. It has a charge time of 3 minutes total. And you hold it in your hand and you hit a button and it flies away and comes back and takes terrible video of you. That's all it does.
How is that similar to DJI?
Because it has because it has the DJI flight modes, and you're paying $250 for only the DJI flight modes, and that's all it does.
You mean the flight modes like auto pick or something? Yeah. It's not. It can't manually fly at all.
Yes. Literally, all it does is you hit a button, it flies away from you and comes back, or it flies around you without any obstacle detection and comes back. Like it's literally
no obstacle detection at all.
No, it's just terrible. It's
Well,
a
now,
waste of money.
right here, we've got the Wall Street Journal with 3.53 million subscribers, Blunty. And they ask the question, is the selfie mini drone worth $230? And I assume the answer is no. I assume
No.
it's just like, no,
No,
F
she
you,
tries
this
to
is
use
terrible.
it, and it's like shaking all around in the wind because it has no wind resistance. It's like it's terrible. It's
Okay,
terrible.
I don't want to actually play this video on the off chance that the Wall Street Journal copy strikes me.
But my biggest issue with this is they figured out a way to sell you a $75 or $100 75 millimeter whoop, but they've sold it to you for $250.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all they've done is add a button, and there's no obstacle detection. It doesn't do anything extra. It literally just flies in angle mode or whatever.
Does it have actual like GPS, or is it just dead reckoning? It just
As far as
flies
I know,
forward
no.
for 5 seconds
flies,
and then turns into.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it is just like positional. It might have GPS, but I doubt it.
Oh, interesting.
But they weren't clear about it.
And then what? Then what do
This
you
makes
do
no
with
sense.
this terrible video?
You put it
Why?
on.
Why? No, this is whoever producer decided to do this should be fired.
This is how mainstream media looks at drones. Remember?
Pixie drone, Pixie sticks. That's irrelevant. Stop.
Yeah.
That's stupid, and you should stop. Just because it's clever doesn't mean it's useful or good. It's clever. You've just free associated. Okay, so then you get it on your phone. So what do they say in the Wall Street Journal review? Do they say it's good? Do they tell you to buy it?
No, they don't. I don't know. They basically don't say yes or no, but they say it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it shakes around in the wind, and it doesn't have a lot of good control.
Oh, so they actually are semi-critical.
Yeah.
That's nice. Too bad they didn't have the balls to take a stand in their title like you did with our title.
Yeah, do not buy this.
Yeah.
Anybody watching this video, this show should never be buying that. Yeah.
Presumably, this is a paid placement. I mean, I guess if it was a paid placement, they'd have to disclose that. Anyway. Okay, well.
All right. Well, don't buy the Pixy.
Don't buy that. Don't buy that. Good to know.
Yes.
Johnny 5 is going to put some heads-up motors in there. We should buy that drone and then... I mean, it doesn't have any controllability at all, so there's no point tweaking it. Anyway.
All right.
All right, well, good. We got the word out there. Thank you.
Yeah. Next up, unfortunately, what might be some bad news, but we've kind of talked a little bit about before. Intel CEO has come out and said that the chip shortage could continue until 2024. Previously, they had given 2023 as a date at their from their earlier estimates, and when they got everything back in action. But now what they're finding out, something we heard from MadsTech and a few other folks, is basically the equipment manufacturing is now the problem. So they're having trouble building the machines to build the chips, and they're having to refactor chip machines into different locations, move them to different factories, and repurpose. And unfortunately, it's taken some time to get new machines together.
Yeah, we know that companies have been ramping up their chip production in response to the shortage, and we know that it takes time to bring chip production online. And what we're hearing now is that the time it takes to bring the chip production online is going to be longer than we had hoped.
Yeah, they were basically ramping up, like you said, they were ramping up to build all this stuff out and get more stuff to going, but they're unfortunately unable to build the machines. They're having trouble building the machines to.
Come on, I mean, why? Can't imagine what could be going on in the world that would get in the way of this kind of thing. I said sarcastically, but actually kind of then just thought of a list of things that are going on and kind of just felt sad. So never mind.
Hopefully it won't be that bad, but one of the things that we talked about previously is this, this is Intel, but unfortunately this stuff will start to affect STM and similar things.
It is.
Because
it is affecting. I mean, I've heard people, let's focus this on FPV because that's what the show is about. Instead of focusing on the terrible, awful, depressing things that are happening in the wider world, let's focus on the terrible, awful, depressing things that are happening in the world of FPV, which is that we see ESCs and flight controllers getting more expensive. We just, this hasn't released yet, but when you and I recorded the new product roundup, we showed a Foxeer ESC that costs $125 for a 4-in-1 ESC. Granted, that's high end, but that's just inconceivable 2 years ago, a year ago. I've heard some people say that they are hearing that it's getting harder and harder to get. So F4 chips used to be the budget go-to. Now manufacturers are using F7 and H7 chips because they can't get F4 chips. ESCs moved to F4 chips. Who knows what they're going to do? And now I'm hearing rumors, that F7 and H7 chips are also getting hard to get. If Dominic Clifton is still in the chat, he could probably weigh in on that. So just shit's going to get more expensive, I guess is the gist of it. What are you going to do?
I think so. And harder to get. I mean, it'll depend on how it goes, but they're talking about repurposing these, things that would typically be from like 48 to 90 nanometers or whatever, that normally couldn't do the smaller stuff. They're going to repurpose those for different parts of the process so that they can still use them to speed along the process and get the throughput up. So, yeah. Hopefully we'll continue to weather the storm. It's been getting worse for a while, I think, but hopefully it'll eventually start to pull out.
Well, and in addition, we should keep our eyes out for more and more counterfeit chips showing up. We talked about this previously on the news. Things, even things that are acquired at a decent price and sold may not work the way they're expected, and this is just the world we're living in. So, surely the increased prices. I mean, when you crash and you blow up an ESC and it costs $45, it hurts. When you crash and you blow up an ESC, it costs $80. It really hurts. And at a certain point, people are just going to be like, screw it, this is not the hobby for me, because crashing and breaking things is just a part of the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll keep our eyes out and we'll keep our fingers crossed, I guess, is the takeaway. Well, that actually brings us to It's Barely News.
The drone cinematic of the week.
I'm sorry, Blunty. No, I'm sorry. What was I? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I knew that. Good thing you're here, man.
All
the
right.
drone cinematic of the week. Cirque du Soleil. Tell us about this, Blunty.
This is a pretty cool shot. It's not like the best shot you've ever seen or anything, but it is a pretty cool shot, and it's used as an advertisement for the new Cirque du Soleil in Vancouver. So, they've got a drone up on the top of BC Place. Yeah.
Do we know who the pilot is?
I do not. I'm not sure if they credit him in the info here, and I did not receive that. I got a few people that sent this to me, but I unfortunately do not see a credited pilot.
Well, there you go. It's a really cool shot. We're not going to show the whole shot because let's not ruin it. It's linked in the video description. Give them the views. Let's not take their views. But it's pretty freaking cool. I love that sort of, what do they call it, where you zoom in at the same time that you're moving, so it sort of compresses the background. That was a great little move right there. Love that. There are links. There's a link to that down in the video description. Anybody know who the pilot is? People in the chat might know. We'll see. All right, Blunty.
Right.
What's next?
We got It's Barely News is coming up next, and it's a lot. We've got a lot of It's Barely News. There's a lot of barely news, so it's barely. I don't know how you say that.
It's barely.
It's barely news in the content is barely content, but it is a lot of content, right?
Yeah, and I love this first one. Drone recovered in Ontario carrying a bag full of guns.
Yeah,
a bag full of guns. A bag. Who has a bunch of guns and they're just like, we don't know, a bag? Sure.
Criminals.
Criminals. You're right. Dirty.
I'm going to guess criminals.
Criminals.
So yeah, the Ontario Provincial Police have are investigating a shopping bag found containing 11
A shopping
handguns.
bag. Not even like 11, a nice nylon bag or leather bag.
And 11 handguns hanging from a drone, but they got it stuck in a tree, and they recovered it from a tree.
That's an expensive drone.
Yeah.
That's a big drone. I can't tell exactly what it is.
Doesn't take many illegal guns to pay for a drone, I bet.
No, I know. I'm just saying whoever lost this drone is sad for many reasons, but it's not like they lost a Mavic.
You know what they say, you miss all the shots you don't take.
You miss all the guns you don't put in a bag and try to fly over a prison wall. There was a guy, he posted on Facebook, actually, I think, and someone texted him and was like, "Hey, I need to hire." He has a drone operation. He's like, "I need to hire you for a gig." He was like, "Okay, well, tell me like what kind of shots you're looking to get. Tell me about the gig, and I'll give you a price." And the guy's like, "There's no shots. I just need you to drop some stuff over a prison wall. I'm in prison, and I need you to bring me some cigarettes and some, I don't know what else." And he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that. Sorry." I'm like, "You're in prison, and you're trying to hire a drone operator outside of prison to drop you stuff. I mean, I guess, cool, good for you. But there you go. Bag full of guns. All right, next up.
All right, next up. Hawaii is nearing legal prohibition of drones for fishing. This is a new regulation they're trying to enforce that will prohibit the use of drones for fishing unless permitted by the Department of Natural
How are drones used in fishing?
So currently, the way that they're doing this is they're attaching the line to the drone, and they're taking it out past the surf, and then they're dropping it off the drone so they can fish out past the surf where you would normally, it would be difficult to cast.
Huh.
And for some reason, which I don't understand at all, they're saying it's unfair and a threat to traditional methods when you can use any rod you want and you can take a boat. I mean, there's so many different ways.
I mean, you could take a boat right out past the surf and then fish out there. So,
yeah,
I don't know, but
yeah, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense at all. But they are trying to enforce this. But it seems like this is probably going to be permit based. So they're probably doing this to try to make money off the people who are doing it.
Oh, nice.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Government's always got to get their cut. So they're not doing anything like harassing whales with drones or dropping bait. All they're doing is they're using the drone instead of going whoosh. I mean, could they use a slingshot? Could they use a
powered rod?
Okay.
Like they make a powered rod. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems dumb.
I mean, lots of things seem dumb.
Yeah.
Especially laws, but I don't understand. Like, then what? You drop the the floater, right? The hook is hanging down in the water, and then you've got the line coming back to you on the shore.
Yeah, that's
correct. Is it just
yeah.
like floating in the water? What's happening to your line?
I mean, you're deep sea fishing, so it depends on what you're fishing for. But I mean, it probably is it's not on a bobber, but it depends on what you're fishing for.
Is it just sitting there, laying on the bottom of the ocean?
Can be like, yeah. You ever fished in the ocean?
No.
Yeah, you take a rod and you just chunk it, and then it goes out, and then you put a weight on the end, and then you put some, and then you I don't know. So you have a weight at the bottom. That's the way I always used to fish in the ocean. And then you put hooks up like here, and then you put a hook up here, and then you put a hook up here. So the weight sits down here, but the bait is floating 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet off the bottom.
What?
And then the fish will come by and eat the hooks.
So instead of floating on the surface, which I guess that makes sense, there's all the waves and shit. The bait is floating, and you've got a weight, and the hooks go up from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then sometimes you put like colors or whatever. I mean, it depends on what you're fishing for. But
I just learned that you have fish in the ocean, so I didn't even know that. Have you fished off a boat? What, you fished off the beach?
Fishing is probably in the top 5 of things I know how to do. Yeah.
I didn't know this. All this time I've known you.
I grew up in Florida, so I grew up fishing.
Oh, wow. Fishing in the ocean. But I didn't know when you fish, you fish off the bottom.
Yeah, freshwater and saltwater. It depends on what you're fishing for, but most of the time you're going to be fishing off the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now it makes more sense that the line then how do you know when you've got a bite? Like, normally you feel the tug on the line.
Yeah, they're big fish out there. I mean, most of the time.
Okay. Then what happens once you hook
You're
one?
not catching a bass. Yeah.
I mean, if you're on a boat, you reel it in and you bring it on the boat. If you're on the beach, you just kind of drag it up the beach.
And yeah, it can be a real bitch because they'll run miles down one way or the other, and there's not like a lot of
my God, they're going that way, and you're on a pier or something, and they're like,
if you're catching sharks and stuff, it can be 30 minutes to an hour or more where you're sitting there trying to get that rod in. If you're using, and that's why you use so you use like a leader. If you're fishing for sharks, you'll use a leader, so the shark can't bite the leader. It's like a metal wire essentially that you use with the hooks on the wire.
Yeah, so it doesn't just bite through the wire.
Yeah, and if you have a leader on the line and you're not like going to lose it from structure or something, you could fight for an hour. I mean, you got to wear the shark out.
Wow, that's really something. Yeah. Okay. Well, now it makes more sense. That's really.
This has been fishing with
we all. Yeah, we all learned something today. I didn't know any of that. That's really interesting. Yeah. All right. So yeah, drone fishing in Hawaii. You're gonna have to pay your cut. That's the takeaway. Next up, that was a real pleasant surprise. I did not see that coming. What's like the other top 5 things you know how to do?
Let's see.
I mean,
I don't know.
Cannabis. You're like a professional cannabis consultant.
Yeah, cannabis is real high.
Ocean fishing.
Oh, any fishing, freshwater and saltwater. I could. Yeah. Okay. Because I grew up with a pond, so I do both.
All right.
Let's see. I mean, I could do HVAC, right? So any like air conditioning, heating, cooling, electrical, plumbing, like I can do all that stuff.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, that's 3. Drones have got to be on there. Are drones not even in the top 5?
I mean, drones are in the top 5 at this point, yeah, because I've done drones for long enough. But I mean, that kind of goes along with low voltage controls, PLC programming. Let's see. I don't know offhand, I guess.
All right, there's room for one surprise. 5. All right.
But yeah.
He's not going to tell you the second one. The last one, you have to really get to know him. Okay.
Sure, I could come up with.
Okay, next up, let's move on. DJI under fire. I'm sorry, we're only allowed to say nice things about DJI in this live stream. So
unfortunately, this is not going to be a great story because DJI is under fire, and for probably a good reason, because it sounds like they did a real stupid thing. DJI has insisted that basically they're drone tracking Aeroscope, right? We've talked a little bit before, I think, about Aeroscope, but Aeroscope is the way that they can track any drone in the air, essentially. So you set up an Aeroscope station and then you hit a button and then it will just show you information about all the DJI drones that are in the area that it can see with Aeroscope.
And this was known.
And this was known. However, the assumption of what DJI kept telling people when the news kept asking about it, DJI kept saying it was encrypted. They said, "Don't worry, it's encrypted. It's not a big deal. This is happening, but it's encrypted. So don't worry about it. The decryption hardware is theoretically only sold to the good guys, right? Stuff like that." Mm-hmm. And then it turns out that was not true. And DJI said it was not encrypted. It was unencrypted, and hey, whoops.
So this is a weird story. There are several things I take from this story. The first is the claim that it's encrypted kind of was. It never really made sense to me why that was relevant, because it was known that many governments have the Aeroscopes. So like if everybody's got the Aeroscope anyway, what do you care that it's encrypted? They know where you are.
Because a random Joe can't know where you are, right? That's the idea.
Right. Well, and
there's a limited number of Aeroscopes, and they all have licenses, and DJI knows where they are and who they sold them to, and all those things,
and maybe other people do too. But it's about your exposure and your sort of threat surface. That if you think that the packets are encrypted and only people with Aeroscope can know where you are, then you might make certain decisions based on that. But the other thing that stood out to me was how freaking typical it is with DJI that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. I 100% believe that executive or whoever it was who said that they were encrypted believed it, and that he asked the person that he thought for sure would know, and they said it was encrypted. I don't think that he was being dishonest, because they said it was an American person, an executive or engineer, who said it was encrypted. And then after getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, he went back to China, and finally they said, well, actually, it's not encrypted. I buy that. I've seen so much of this bullshit from DJI. And it's why when someone says, oh, the V3 goggles are going to have such and such a feature, I'm like, you don't know. Until the day it drops, you just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've seen this over and over again where, we talk to like a representative that we'll have, or they'll even say they talk to somebody else. And every time it's like, 30% maybe is like legitimate information, and the rest is like hearsay or something an engineer told them or something, and an email got misinterpreted for anything like that. So we've also got a link in the show notes to that project. So if you there's a guy who is the hacker in question in the article who has a GitHub with the information.
Of course
so it's still there's still work in progress, but there is a lot of work that has been done, and he details the whole thing. He goes through the process that he used to figure all this stuff out. And he basically had to do all this frequency offset detection and phase correction, equalization, symbol extraction, all that kind of stuff. He worked through all that stuff to figure out how it all works.
And this is cool because on the one hand, if you say to yourself, wait, you mean my DJI drone is broadcasting packets that identify me, identify its location, and they're not encrypted, and anybody could theoretically pick them up. You go, oh, well, that's bad. I don't like that. But if you say this open source project is trying to learn how to fake these packets, and then anybody could just broadcast these packets to say anything they want, and that's kind of interesting. Kind of denial of service obfuscation, but the very next thing that happened is DJI will just release a firmware update that encrypts it, and then because of course they will, which is another thing I've noticed with DJI, which is as soon as you actually back them in the vague direction of a corner, they just snap their fingers and do whatever you wanted in the first place, and fix the problem.
Right.
Which is what we're seeing with the DJI goggles and the Margarine project. In my opinion. The fact that Margarine rooted Goggles V2 means immediately DJI is going to release a V3 that locks out that and fixes some of the things that people were complaining about. That's my theory.
Gotcha. I think we'll know that when they do the update for the V1 and V2 goggles that locks them out as well.
Yeah.
Until they do that, to me, like, I don't know that they're directly targeting Margarine. So
we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got another thing related to that, don't we?
Yeah, so that being said, DJI, it's not clear if it was in the wake of this or not, because all this kind of came out at relatively the same time. But one thing they've done that seems positive to some people, negative to others, is basically they're no longer selling drones to either Russia or Ukraine. So they've said that, hey, we don't want to be used in any combat. And so for now, we've decided to halt all business to Russia and Ukraine to make sure that they're not buying them for combat purposes.
Yeah.
This is the first time anybody, basically any company, has come out with this or anything like this about, combat-focused stuff. Most companies who pulled out talked about economic concerns or whatever, but they specifically said they don't want their stuff to be used in combat.
So this is interesting because there have been accusations elsewhere, and I don't think we're going to weigh in on these accusations. We don't really have the basis to do that. That China was supporting Russia, that DJI ostensibly at the behest of the Chinese government or was like disabling drones or disabling Aeroscope systems for the Ukrainian government. We don't know if any of that is true. We're not gonna go there. But for them to now say, well, we're just pulling out entirely, maybe there's just been enough heat that they've decided it's not worth it to take sides, or maybe they never were taking sides. But at this time, it sort of seems like they're trying to appear neutral.
So it is interesting. I mean, normally they don't do anything, so it's interesting for them to take the stance, and it definitely will. I mean, it may help them financially because people will like that they're doing it, but it definitely seems to hurt them financially if they were going to sell a bunch of stuff that will be used once or twice. I mean, that's a bunch of money they're tossing down the drain, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's a fact that DJI drones are used by police and military all around the world. They're just an extremely, extremely effective tool. It's extremely easy for someone to learn to fly them, and their ability to operate and gather information, or in some cases deliver ordnance, is, it's just a real thing. It's a very effective tool. For DJI to say, no, we don't think they should be used in combat. I mean, they have to have known this was going on and been okay with it, even if it was not their official line. And the fact that they've stopped selling, I think, is not going to slow things down too much because, how hard is it to have a shell company in Poland who buys a bunch of DJI drones and ships them into Ukraine, or the same for Russia? So
Sure.
I don't know what kind of effect this will actually have. Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's barely news. That's why it's barely news.
That's true. We really don't have a lot of substance here. Okay, well, it's nice that they've done that. Let's see what happens.
This one is borderline news versus a company doing something to benefit them, but I thought this was kind of interesting, so I wanted to let you know. If you're making a Newbeedrone order anyway, and you've got a broken Cockroach frame, you can now take a picture of it, a couple pictures of it, and prove that it's broken, and they'll replace it for you, and you'll get a free Cockroach frame on your next order. So
I mean, cool. There you go. Buy the Cockroach frame. You know, eventually you do break frames.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Good. Thank you, Newbeedrone. Good move.
All right. Next up, we've got a light show that has caused a lot of controversy. There is I believe it's a German light show. It's caused fingers to be pointed at FPV pilots, and nobody knows who's telling the truth right now.
Well, here's a picture of the light show.
Yeah, so basically, I put a link to the video as well in the show notes. Maybe we could check that out, because basically it'll show them dropping out of the sky.
Again?
Yeah, but it's not a lot of them, and it's kind of interesting because it happens across a lot of time. So here on the right, you'll see a couple of them drop out of formation.
There they go.
Yeah.
Bye.
And they're blaming this on local FPV drone pilots.
Well, of course they are.
They didn't say very specifically exactly how they affected them or what was happening. Clearly, this seems to be control link interference, if it was anything. But basically, what other commenters have said, we linked to a Reddit article about this. And basically, the Reddit article says, if you scroll down, I don't know if you've got a translate add-on, but basically, this is all in German. But there's a great comment down there. If you scroll down, and he basically talks about how he says he's in the industry, but either way, like what his comments say make a lot of sense. And he says that this situation is very difficult to get a permit for anyway, and it's very difficult to get signal from across, basically across the water where they had to be located. And those things caused them to blame it on FPV drones when essentially it was link quality issues because of the way they had to manage these drones from the situations they were in. The reflections from the building and the water and like all the different areas around have always been a problem there, have been a problem before, and were a problem again. And it seems like it's kind of just pushed on random drones.
Seems like this person is saying that they have inside information. Of course, you should always take that with a grain of salt. But he says the manufacturer of the drones rejected the project because of the location. And he said I can't prove it without doxing people, but so you'll just have to take my word for it or not.
Yeah, I mean, he explains how he says the drones work. He says you can contact the manufacturer and they'll tell you the same thing. You know, he explains how their fail-safe procedures work, why they fell. You know, I don't know. It's very interesting to me. It definitely does seem like it's very unlikely to me that somehow that could happen, because if you look at the drones that are dropping out, they're happening across the time. You know, there's 10 to 20 of them, I think, that fall out. I think it's like 12 maybe. But it happens across the different times and they're different parts. And yeah, it just doesn't really track, right? It doesn't really make sense, especially how we know like FHSS works and like, yeah, it doesn't really track for me. So
yeah, I mean this absolutely makes sense. This part here, the water we know makes multipaths. Building a big face of a building makes multipath, and for them to just say, oh, it was an FPV pilot. Well, where? Show me, prove it. Anyway. Always take Reddit completely at its word, though, and believe everything they say, because anyone who says anything confidently on Reddit must be right. So we'll take it with a grain of salt. But I personally would love to believe that it wasn't FPV pilots. Would need some proof of that. So, Florida. I see a headline that includes Florida, and I don't know whether to be thrilled or terrified.
This actually seems like a good one. So Florida has the Florida Light and Power of the Light, has decided to buy the biggest set of autonomous drones that anybody's ever done. They're going to lay out a commercial deployment of autonomous drone, these box systems, basically. And they'll be like drone base stations that they'll launch out of that they can use for automated servicing and checking of lines and power systems. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, neat. So you got the drone, it's in a box, and then when you want to inspect the line, you just sort of wake up the drone, and it goes and flies out and inspects the lines and then flies home again.
Yeah, basically, some of the areas they're trying to do daily inspections, and this is like a way for them to not have to have people out there doing those daily inspections, get them up on buckets, and I'm sure there's less risk to people as well. So
that is badass. That's honestly badass.
They also said it was a big help when people lost power because they still had emergency power to these boxes and were able to fly some of the drones out and see what the damage was, and just super helpful. So,
wow. I wonder what kind of a link they're using to fly the drone. What kind of control link and what kind of video link. I know how they're getting that back. That's a good question.
Done by a company called Percepto, which I've not heard of before. So.
It's such a weird year, Blunty, in so many ways, but especially for drones. I feel like we should make this like a rant or a discussion topic for a future episode. I feel like 2022 is a watershed year for drones because we're seeing them used in the visibility of drones on the battlefield is so high right now because of what we're seeing coming out of Ukraine. This is not that it hasn't been happening, but that people are aware of it in a way they weren't. The visibility of drones in the media is high. Things like the ambulance movie, right, for example, and drone shots and Johnny FPV. That's all seems to have come to a head. And we're seeing more and more of these drone things like this, things like drone delivery. I feel like 2022 in some ways is a watershed year for the public awareness of drones and their movement out of enthusiast space into the general public.
Definitely seems like it is coming more to the forefront. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Okay. One more, as always.
Two more. We got one more.
Two more.
You missed there.
Which one did I miss?
It's not a two more.
Oh no. Oh,
amazing drone
my bad.
footage of it. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've got a video here from Reed Timmer, who we've shown before, who goes out with Vanover sometimes. And he's got this is a Mavic Air 2 that he uses for these shots. I thought this was pretty cool.
Jesus.
He's able to
Unreal.
He basically launches the Air 2. They fly just outside of the path where they think it's going to go, and then he lets it land and then goes and recovers it when it's safe to go back. But this is some shots you just don't see.
No.
This is really, really fascinating.
Crazy.
I mean, it's horrible destruction, of course. It's a natural
It's an angle of a
disaster,
tornado you don't usually get.
Yeah, but it's just it's wild footage. Normally they're way more obscured. Normally it's way harder to see things. If you hit like right around 30 seconds for me.
Yeah.
Just start at 30 seconds to play just for a little bit there.
He's following it.
Yeah, we'll switch to another clip here. So you can actually see the funnel cloud start.
Wow.
Fascinating footage.
There's a link to this in the video description, and everybody should go check it out, of course. There's so much interesting footage here. One of the things I thought was so interesting about this first clip was that if you look at where the houses start getting destroyed, it's not the actual funnel that's visible, but it's out in front of it, of course, which see right here, this house starts getting tore up. It's nowhere near the actual visible funnel. The actual sort of cone of destruction is massive. It's crazy. So kudos to Reed Timmer for getting that footage, and definitely go check that out. The tornadoes are no freaking joke, man.
Yeah. All right. Last up, we've got dogs back in the news.
Dogs in the news. Dogs and drones, always popular.
Yeah.
What are the dogs doing?
This time we had a Cocker Spaniel who unfortunately fell down a cliff.
Oh, no.
He fell down a 150-foot cliff. And the owners were not able to figure out where he went. He was out chasing birds and fell off on his own.
There he is.
And somebody heard him barking and a local resident launched their drone to try to find him, and were able to use the drone to locate where they couldn't see. They were able to find him, and then they launched a rescue effort to get him out of there.
Oh, that's good. He's back. He's home.
Yeah, they got him
Dog
home.
rescued
He was
with
in there
drone.
for a few days, but he made it out. So
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good use of drones, is bringing sausages to dogs, rescuing dogs. If you guys have any other dog drone related news, you should send it
Yeah.
to news
Yeah.
at fpvknowitall.com, which is where you can send
Yeah.
submissions for us to cover.
absolutely. We also appreciate it if you could like this video. Most of you probably have not liked this video. We know that from
Yeah,
the
what's wrong with you?
statistics. So go in there and like
Go
this
like the
video.
video. Yeah.
And subscribe to this channel and hit that little notification bell. All that stuff helps out. And then click those notifications when you see them. And otherwise, yeah, we appreciate you being here. And,
Yeah, that's going to do it
watching
for the news today.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. We are going to be back next week with more news, and all the stories from the news today, if you missed any, are going to go up on the JB Livestream Clips channel, as well as actual clips from my live stream that Blunty's working on. So,
Real quick, maybe we should let anybody who's here. Maybe we should let them know you're not streaming on Sunday. Is that correct?
oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Sunday is Mother's Day, and I'm going to be doing something special for my the mother of my children. So Sunday I will not be streaming. That's true.
Yeah.
It's not scheduled, so people will hopefully figure it out. But good point. That is news as well.
Cool.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. Blunty, thank you so much. As always, thank you guys for coming out. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks a lot.